Niall McGrath for offtheball.com in London, England, ahead of UFC Fight Night Till versus Masvidal. Going to do a little preview with my colleague here, Oscar Willis from the Mac Life. Lots of excitement ahead of Darren Till versus Jorge Masvidal tonight. Oscar, how are you enjoying the fight week?
I am indeed. It's been a good time. It's always nice to be back in London as well. It's where I'm from, so it's good to be back.
Yeah, good city. The guys have been great to us here this week. Just your feelings, you know, a guy being from the UK, Darren Till, the excitement, the buzz around this card. Is this one of the best UFC European cards we've seen in quite some time?
I think so, yeah. I mean, certainly some of the names might not be as well known as your Bispings or your Andersons that we've had in the past, but I think from top to bottom, the cards, for people who know MMA, the card's pretty stacked. I think so.
Definitely. Okay, we'll start off, I think, with an Irishman. A lot of excitement back home about our Joesph Duffy. He goes up against Marc Diakiese. And, you know, for me, it's great to see Joe back in there. Had a lot of injuries, obviously the rib injury, and before that the shoulder injury. This is a really, really tough, good matchup on paper. Yeah,
I mean, we were just saying off camera, it feels like Joe's been injured so many times. Like his UFC career's never really got going as good as it could. For me, this could be one of the best fights on the card. Him and Marc, stylistically, I think it could be a great fun stand-up fight. I think if Joe probably has more tools in his arsenal. I think if he decides to take it down to the ground, Marc could be in trouble. But certainly, of the card, it's one of the fights I'm looking most forward to.
Does Marc Diakiese, obviously with the 3 losses, it's you know, is he fighting for his UFC career and tenure?
I don't think so. I think there was a time where he might have been, but I think now with the amount of shows they're putting on every year, they have the UFC Londons they do every year. I think they need English guys, right, for the roster. So I think a loss to Joe Duffy is not the worst loss in the world. It's an understandable loss, but if he loses this, then I would say the next one is probably do or die.
Where do you think it is for Joe? You know, I think if, as we said there, you know, if he can get that momentum back in his career, he can still push and go to that upper echelon of the division. Do you feel that way with Joesph Duffy as well?
I do indeed, and I think not to, you know, it's so far in the past now, it's almost irrelevant, but the McGregor connection will always be there. As soon as your name's touched to his, people just recognise your name, right? And I think Joe's a recognisable guy in the division, and I think a couple of wins, you would see him fly up the ranks pretty quickly. I really do.
Definitely. And we obviously have to talk about a hometown guy here, Nathaniel Wood, protege of Brad Pickett. He goes up against Henry Quinones. Listen, I think this guy is star power, and I think this could be the platform and the stage for him to really push on to that next level. Do you feel that way as well?
100%. And I think the UFC's got this booking really right, because when did Stipe Miocic look like the biggest star? When he fought in his hometown in Cleveland, and I think the crowd is going to be going insane when he walks out.
Yeah, he got a great pop yesterday.
It absolutely did. So I think if he wins in impressive fashion and people on TV see, wow, this guy's getting, you know, cheered out the building, I think it could really propel him onwards from here.
Does he get the job done? You know, Henry Quinones is a guy who's vastly underrated, in my opinion. 4 straight wins as well. You know, he's had tough opponents in his UFC tenure so far, but he's passed the test every time. And we've also seen him implement submissions as well on top of that knockout power. He's becoming an all-round mixed martial artist.
I do think he gets the job done. I think he's very much growing as a fighter, right? Every time we see him, he seems to have a new little skill set added to it. I do think he gets it done. I don't think it'll be necessarily an easy night out, but then I could also seeing it be an easy night out. You know what I mean? It could either be a really drawn out, like tentative 3 rounds, or I think he could get it done really early. But I do think he'll get it done, is my point.
I agree with you with that one. I think it's a fascinating fight to look forward to. Also on the card, we have the Battle of Wales. I know Ireland play Wales today in the rugby as well. We're obviously a big rugby outlet in Ireland. But John Phillips versus Jack Marshman, another fight I think both guys you know, are really keen to get in there and show what they're all about. You know, it's been a frustrating time, I think, for John Phillips. He hasn't translated that form on the regional scene over into the UFC. But, you know, for me, this is, again, another potential fight of the night contender.
Absolutely, and that's why they've got it opening the main card, right? Because they know it's going to be a barn burner. It's the Battle of Wales. I enjoy that about it. I think it's going to be interesting as well because Jack Marshman, he gets hit. He says he's not going to go swinging and banging, but he gets hit and he just goes. And I think we could see a real fun barn burner there.
You know, I think this one maybe have a little bit more on the line. I think both guys feel as though they actually are fighting for their career because they, you know, in terms of John Phillips, I think he's looked very much below par in his tenure. So this is a crucial one. I think maybe more so for him than Jack Marshman because Jack Marshman has been involved in Fight of the Nights in the UFC. Is there more maybe on the line for John Phillips here?
I actually think it's Jack. He's got more in line with missing weight yesterday.
Yeah.
I think if he loses this, then he is probably gone from the UFC. I know that they, like we were just saying about Marc Diakiese, I know they want those guys, but at a certain point, I think, especially he's got an Army career as well, I think it's actually Marshman who could be on the outs if he loses this one.
Who gets the job done there?
I mean, it's a bit of a coin toss, really, because they're just going to go and beat the hell out of each other, aren't they? So
I'd imagine so. It's definitely one of them. All right, moving on up the card. Co-main event, I think Leon Edwards versus Gunnar Nelson is an absolutely fascinating style of matchup. We know what Gunnar Nelson brings to the table every fight. He gets the fight to the ground. 9 times out of 10, he's going to be the victor. Leon Edwards, criminally underrated in my opinion. And he said this week, he said to you and I at the media day, that he feels underappreciated and underrated by the UFC, and I think he's a very valid point in that.
100% agree. And you know, if you look at the numbers of this week of who's been getting the most views, Leon Edwards is very much underrated. I don't think he's getting the attention he deserves, especially even in a co-main event slot. I think people are just sort of looking past him. So he could make a statement tonight. He really could. If he came out and beat Gunnar, he could say to the people watching, you should have paid attention. So I think he'll be thinking that.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does as well. I think he used to come out and start this fight very fast and test Gunnar on the feet. As you said there, you know, being underrated, is he underappreciated almost by the promotion as well? You know, he did. He went in and he beat Donald Cowboy Cerrone over 5 rounds convincingly.
I do think that the UFC like guys who go out and get it done when they can get it done. I think maybe towards the end of that Cowboy fight, he maybe just sort of took it calm, got his victory. So maybe that's something, you know, he didn't go and do a till and just smash him. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, I think he probably is. I think that he did good by calling for that till fight at the press conference a month or 2 ago. I think that was very...
It plants seeds.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a fight before I probably didn't really think about that much. Now I see it, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. With MVP and Paul Daly being this English versus English thing that didn't really get off the ground, let's run it back in the UFC and see if it can go get a bit better this time, you know? I'd be interested.
You know, in terms, it really is your classic striker versus grappler. I think Leon's ground game is probably underrated as well, but you know, what way can you see this fight panning out?
I think you're right, Leon will come out hard early on. I think he'll probably go for aggressive combinations. He was throwing some really, really hard kicks at the open workouts, so you can't really look into that too much, but I did notice that. And I think Gunnar will take his time, and it's the first 3 or 4 minutes I think will be all Leon, and then maybe Gunnar can start just getting his rhythm and getting back into it, and then we'll see. I think Gunnar's comfortable on the feet. I don't necessarily think he's going to do the grappler and just shoot for the takedown, but again, it's like we were talking about Joe Duffy, Marc Diakiese. I think Gunnar's probably got a more well-rounded aptitude. His stand-up has
definitely improved in the last number of years, and you know, I think we've seen that. It's been pretty evident. So you know, I do fancy Gunnar in this, but I wouldn't be surprised. It really is a really close fight to call. Okay, moving on to the main events. Liverpool's own fighting here in London. Darren Till up against Jorge Masvidal. The one thing I'll have to say about this, I've been very, very surprised, and we talked about this off camera as well just a few moments ago. Just the attitude, the mindsets of both guys. Since that Tyron Woodley loss, Darren Till has totally changed his approach to the fight. Is that in relation to the Tyron Woodley loss?
I think he got humbled, right? I think he's the first person to say that as well. I think he's pretty open that he was way too confident, but barely warmed up for the fight. I think he's just... The UFC strapped a rocket to his back and sent him up the rankings as fast as they could.
It was too soon.
I think it was too soon, and I think he probably thinks deep down it was too soon. I think he even said he didn't deserve the title fight after the Thompson.
Yeah, he did.
So I think he's mentally, I think he just appreciates his age, where he's at, and how far he's got to go. And I think that's a good thing.
Jorge Masvidal, a veteran who's never been finished in his UFC tenure. This is a guy that is so tough, so good, such good, crisp boxing. Underrated wrestling as well, obviously being at ATT. Gritty, grindy. He's a bit of a nightmare opponent for anyone.
Oh yeah, that's not a fun night, getting into a cage with Jorge Masvidal having a fight. That's not fun for anyone. But I think when you see them standing next to each other, the size thing plays into account, right? Till at welterweight, insanely big. And when you look at them standing next to each other, you sort of think like, well, this is what Cerrone and Till look like next to each other. You know, this big guy towering over. So for me, I think Jorge is game bred, right? I think he's super game, and I think he will give Till a tough time, but I do think the size will be the biggest factor here. I
tend to agree with you. I think Darren could possibly get a finish winning this. You know, I think it's going to go 2-3 rounds. I'm not sure if it'll go the 4 or 5, the championship rounds in the main event, but it is a fascinating match. So Darren Till, you know, will he get the finish here?
It's a tough one, man. Jorge's never been finished by strikes, right?
That's why I think there's a first time for everything.
Yeah, I think Jorge actually told me that at the media days. Like, I've never been finished by strikes, and I thought, oh yeah. Before that, I thought Till would be by strikes, and now you sort of wonder. But I do think he will. I do think he'll get the finish. I think Jorge does get touched sometimes. You know, he got like hit a few times cleanly in the Stephen Thompson fight. I think Till will get him with a big left.
Oscar Willis, I do appreciate the time, having a little chat about the fights here in London. Thank you guys for your hospitality.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.